Hi, welcome to my studio this afternoon. This afternoon I thought I'd share with you how I stretch my paper. I like to work on stretched paper for my paintings and I tend to do so whenever I'm using paper that isn't a really heavy paper. So this is a Bockingford 300 gram, 140 pounds, and a lot of artists will work on this unstretched. I generally prefer to work on a nice stretched sheet. I do work on this weight of paper in sketchbooks unstretched, but if I'm working on a painting, I want to work on it stretched so that it's nice and flat and taut. And then if I've painted lovely fluid washes on it, it'll dry back to this nice flat taut surface. So I'm going to show you how I stretched my paper. I'm going to pop this one out of the way so that I don't splash it. I was shown this way many years ago when I was doing my A-levels, and it's worked for me, so I thought I'd show you how I like to stretch mine. So to start with, I'll get everything out that I'm going to use. I want to have a board, so I'll use an MDF board, not too thin. If it's too thin, it'll still warp, so I'll have a nice flat board. Again, I've got my Bockingford, you can see it's nice quality paper, it's not too lightweight. And then I'll need gum tape. Now I'll have my gum tape cut to size before I start wetting anything with water, and then I'll pop this out of the way. Experience has taught me, don't leave your gum tape out when stretching paper, because if you splash it, it sticks together and you just end up with a great big solid block of tape that you can't use. So I'm going to pop that one well out of the way before I actually start with the water. And I have my tape already cut to size, so I've got my four pieces cut to size, and again I'm going to pop those out of the way as well so that I don't splash them and then they'll stick together. So I'll just put them to the side. I've got my bowl of water. Now I have cleaned my sink, got rid of all the paint and bits about, so that I do want everything to be nice and clean before I pop my paper into the water. So I'll just pop it in. Some artists like to soak their paper for a long period of time. I quite like just to wet mine, because I was showing this, as I say, many years ago, and this has worked for me, so I've stuck with this way of working. Some will soak it for ever such a long time, others shorter than I am, some will spray it with water, but this works for me. So I'm just allowing the excess water to drip off. I'm just going to run my fingers down the edge just to take off the bead of water on the edge of the paper, and then pop it down onto my board. Just dry my hands. Now I tend to stretch all of my work, all of my painting paper, if it isn't in a sketchbook. The reason for that is if I'm going to just play about with paint, I might find that what I've done I actually really love, but because I haven't stretched it, it's not nice and flat. But the other reason is I always recommend to all of my students they stretch their paper at all times, is because if you only ever stretch it when you want to produce that fabulous painting that you've been waiting to paint, you put such a lot of pressure, I think, onto yourself before you even start painting, because you've spent the time stretching your paper, getting it nice and flat, that there's that then expectation that this has got to be a fabulous picture. Whereas if it's always stretched, it's your normal surface, I think it takes that pressure away. So I'm just going to smooth it out, just going to sweep my hand across the surface just to take the excess water off. There's a hair on there of my jumper. And then I'm going to get the tape one at a time and pop it into the water. So just going to wet it. And again, I'm going to take the excess water off of the tape. I find if I leave too much water on, it doesn't stick. So I want to take the excess off. And then I do want to have plenty of an overlap over the paper. I know it appears that then by doing so I'm losing a lot of my painting surface, but if you only put a little bit of tape onto your paper, what can happen is if working with nice fluid washes, the paper will still want to move and buckle, and if you've only got a little bit of tape, it can actually rip the tape and lift up, or the tape becomes unstuck. So I want to have a nice even amount of overlap on the paper on all four sides. Just turn it around. So again, so we just drop it into the water, and then I tend to use two fingers to sweep down just to take the excess water off of the tape. I've got a towel at the side to dry my fingers on. So so that I don't get it on the paper. Smooth it down. And then I will leave that to dry on a flat surface. So I'll just make sure all the edges are smoothed down, no bubbles or air pockets in it, so it's all in contact with the board. And I have a nice amount over here, you know, a good 1.5 centimetres at least over the paper. So it's got something to adhere to, and I'll leave it somewhere nice and flat now to dry off. And I usually do this the day before I'd like to paint. Now, can you see this is just lifting up a little bit here? If I move this here, this is just buckling slightly. Resist the temptation to smooth that out. Just leave it to be flat. It might buckle even more. You might find you get a few more little bits of ridges in it, but leave it flat and it'll dry back to that nice tight drum. Occasionally, very occasionally, I'll get the odd one that for some reason doesn't go back to the drum and the nice tight surface, but I would say 95% of the time they do. And you get that lovely, flat, clean, taut surface to work on for your paintings. So I hope you found this useful. There's lots of different ways of stretching paper, as I say, and I think sometimes you have to experiment and find out what works for you, but this is the way that I stretch mine. Thank you for watching.